Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today is going to be so cool because we're talking about talking. And what could be more fun than that, especially on a podcast or our YouTube channel here, is to be talking about the importance of voices and, more importantly, how we can be using things like that in our business. So please join me in welcoming our guest today, David Ciccarelli, to our program. Welcome, David.
Oh, thanks so much, Deb. It's a pleasure to be here and looking forward to our conversation today. As you said, we're going to be talking about talking and the power of the human voice as it can be used as a force for good in business.
Right. Not for evil. We're not using this as a force for evil.
Of course. We want to communicate good messages and put those out in the world.
Yes, most definitely. And it really is important as a business to consider this as part of what you're doing to get your message out there. And that's what I love about this and why this is so much fun. So let me tell people just a little bit about you. So David Ciccarelli is the co-founder and CEO of Voices.com, the online marketplace that connects business people with professional voiceover talent. The unique blending of his audio engineering background with self-taught production development skills afforded David the creative freedom to pursue his passion for innovation. Voices.com has been getting attention as a massively disruptive and successful tech company in the voiceover and entertainment space. This is a $4.4 billion 100-year-old industry, and Voices.com is changing how actors, producers, creative directors, and companies like Google, the Discovery Channel, and Ford, and companies like yours and mine add a voice to their brands. So again, David, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. Very, very honored to be here and the opportunity to tell about our story. Hopefully, where it all began and where we're headed in the future and how businesses can consider incorporating voice into their operation.
Cool. Well, let's learn about how it all began. Tell us how it is that you decided this was your passion in life.
Well, I think it's a really good point that, all of us do have passions from when they were a kid. And some of us have figured out how to make a business out of it. Mine was that I was always fascinated with sound. Mom had a collection of old records and a record player, and Dad had the shortwave radio that I could tune into radio stations from around the world. And I was just infatuated with listening to people, other languages, learned to speak French myself. And when I graduated high school and looking for the next step in my educational career, if you will, I found an interesting school called the Ontario Institute of Audio Recording Technology. And there I learned actually how to record and edit and produce music and sound for film, and also learned about voiceovers. So when I graduated from this engineering program, I actually opened up a small recording studio in our hometown here of London, Canada. It's about an hour outside of Toronto. And actually, I got my name in the newspaper, Deb, on my birthday of all days. And in fact, I actually my folks just sent me this article the other day, a photocopy of this old newspaper article that introduced my recording studio to the broader business community, the local business community. Well, it turns out, Deb, that it was actually Stephanie, who's now my wife and co-founder of Voices. At the time, she was a classically trained singer. She'd sing at weddings and special events. And her mom actually read that newspaper article, cut it out for her and left it on her bed and said, hey, you should really get your singing repertoire recorded into this at this studio that just opened up. And so Stephanie came down. We ended up hitting it off, dated and of course got married and have a wonderful family of 4 kids now. But at that time, we really enjoyed working together. And because of that same newspaper article, there were other small businesses. There was an event management company that wanted some phone system greetings. There was a hair salon that wanted some local commercials done, and they wanted a female voice. Well, I only knew one girl in the city at the time, and that was Stephanie. So I gave her a call, invited her to come back down to the studio, and I would be the engineer and she would be the voice talent. And that's how we first got started into the business, and soon created a website that promoted the recording studio, that actually listed Stephanie as the only voice talent. And she actually, we landed a few gigs, but most importantly, it attracted other freelancers from around the world who also have great voices, who spoke different languages and did character voices and audiobooks and phone system recordings, other areas of expertise. And they asked, hey, we found your website. Can we be listed on it? At the beginning, we just listed their little name and a link to their website. And that's really how it all began, was us realizing, wow, there's really a global market for voice. Well, I learned that in school. This was really the advent of the internet as well, too. People discovering that you could find and hire these freelance professionals in a pretty easy way through a website like voices.com. So that's how it all began, and we've been doing it ever since then.
Right. And I love it because we, in many cases, our spoken message is one of the first things that people hear, because they're calling, and and so they get your voicemail. And many business owners think, well, I need something that sounds more professional, or I have a funny voice, or, things like that. And, I used a voiceover, initially 20 years ago when I started my company, because I didn't want it to be me. I thought, I really need to seem like a bigger company, and so I wanted, it didn't really matter. I just needed a different voice, so that there was at least two voices that were saying, hello, on there. And so I had at that point a friend who was an actor, so he obviously knew how to do voiceovers, and he recorded my voicemail message. And so it was this very suave, very professional sounding man who said, hello, you have reached Wise Women Communications. And to me right there, that set the tone for my business. It was professional. It was, it was bigger than just me, all these various things. And so that really was the first time that I tried having a voiceover.
It's, that's a very common story, actually. So you're in good company, Deb, that a lot of businesses, particularly small and growing mid-sized businesses, think of, well, I'm not going to advertise on radio. How am I going to need a voiceover? And then they realize, well, I'm getting dozens of phone calls every day.
Right.
And it's not just that initial, what's referred to as an auto attendant or an automated attendant, that kind of pre-recorded greeting.
Yeah. Hello, you
that's
have
really
reached.
helped. Exactly. Thank you for calling so-and-so business. Press 1 for sales, 2 for customer service. That's an option if you have, if you want those phone lines kind of routed, or those calls, routed to different people within the office. But what a great marketing opportunity, though, is not only that first impression, but if somebody is being transferred, you can actually insert a recording while they're on hold. So many companies just have a couple of beeps, basically dead air,
or horrible
or
music.
or music. It's completely quiet. Why not record? We have, I think it's about a 5-minute recording that just loops, because most people are only on hold for probably 30 seconds or so they'll probably hear a different part of that. But we alternate between customer service centric messages on our on-hold messaging and then sales and promotional messages. So you can, and then, music in between. That is a great time. You have what I would say is a captive audience. It's waiting on hold, and you can, change it up even seasonally. That's the other option, but it's a great starting point to think, how is my brand and how do I want my brand to sound? Do I want a male voice or a female voice? Do I want an air of professionalism? Or maybe it's a fun theme park or an activity center, a gym. It's, you could have the voice of a coach on there or something a little sillier. I mean, you could have a lot of fun with this, creating really what's now become a sonic brand.
Right. And it is such a great marketing opportunity, as you said, especially on hold, or in that transfer process, because, you've got them there. And as you said, they are listening because they're waiting for somebody to pick up the phone. So why not be saying, hey, don't forget to ask about our weekly special, or, as you said, could be seasonal, could be, we just wanted to tell everybody Merry Christmas, whatever it is. And have it again as a professional voice. And it's funny, I do this, your program 520 something, but I'm not happy with my own voice. And I think that's what many people, say. They're like, ooh, I hate listening to recordings of myself. And so that really was another reason why I thought, I needed a different voice. I wanted something that, not that I don't sound professional or anything like that, but I really did just want a different voice, a different first impression that people would get from my company.
I think, again, that's, you don't want to sound like you're necessarily a sole proprietor. So, I mean, we sometimes refer to that as punching above your weight class, where it just sounds like you're a much larger organization. In fact, you probably do serve customers around the world. Maybe you have a team behind the scenes as well, too. So I think most importantly, it's about, personifying your brand through voice that isn't necessarily you. And I know it's a real struggle for a lot of entrepreneurs that they are so personally attached to the success of their organization. And here's one way to separate that, that my company is a brand and an entity of its own.
Right.
And you're there to build it up and benefit from its success, but also pour yourself into it. And so that's one way that we see companies doing that. And, so as much as there's phone systems as a great entry point, it's relatively low cost for a couple $100 often. Even a voicemail system, or voicemail recording can be done for that. One of the other areas that is certainly more, what we're doing here today is around podcasting.
Right.
And it's phenomenal how accessible podcasting has become over the last, let's call it 3 to 5 years, where businesses it doesn't have to be a forever thing where you're doing 500 episodes. A lot of businesses just create a 10 episode series. It might be on a particular topic where they want to interview 10 people or meet 10 customers. So we see these almost, if you think in terms of like a Netflix season, right? Or a mini season where it's only 5 or 10 episodes and a podcast can be shared that way, that you really get to put your stake in the ground in terms of having a podcast, test it out. I think that's a great way. And as you see, I have a studio and you have a studio, but it certainly does not need to be quite as elaborate as that. A lot of recordings are done really, most importantly, in a quiet space, and a microphone that's plugged into, could be a USB microphone plugged into your computer. But the quieter the space, and yes, the more professional equipment you have, it will sound better. But and you can have an intro, and this is again where you can have an intro that kind of sets up the podcast and really introduces you as a host if you're going to do this solo or even one other person. So that's, there's a lot of material that's out there, but that's how you get into iTunes. That's how you can get into Google Play Store. If you're looking, again, just to have a presence on some of these big ecosystems, how can you market yourself to an audience that maybe your competitors, aren't quite as tech savvy or maybe don't feel like they're great on camera. This is a way that you can be different on how you're communicating to your audience.
Right. And let's talk about podcasting, obviously, because, here we are. And anybody who listens to the program heard voiceovers for my program. And I actually have 2. I have one that's provided by C-Suite Network, and then I have one that I do myself, or actually that I add myself. I don't do it. It is a voiceover that I had done. And I shared this with you before we started the program because I didn't want to surprise you. But I signed up for one of your accounts so that I could get a new voiceover for the start of the program, because it's been, I don't know, 18 months maybe since I've had this voiceover that starts my program, and it says, hello, that you are listening to the Business Power Hour, whatever it says. And I thought, if you were an author, I would have read your book. But this way I thought, oh, this is fun. Let's sign up for this. And so first of all, I have to tell you, it was incredibly easy and very impressive. So I went in, I signed up for the account, and I start kind of working my way through. And I was doing a couple other things at the same time, but within 10 minutes, it was, 5 to 10 minutes at the most, my phone rings. And I'm still working on, whatever it is that I'm going to be having you guys do. And the phone rings, and my caller ID said London, Ontario. And I thought, well, you're early. No, it was the account exec. Now, voices.com had absolutely no way to know who I was or why I was doing this. So that was the cool thing, because I put in Wise Women Communications. I didn't put in the Business Power Hour. So I had an account exec contact me on the phone within 10 minutes of me setting up my account. So that right there was incredibly impressive. So I talked to Dimitri. Dimitri was great. I told him he was doing a good job. And now I did tell him right away what I was doing. But I said, this is great, Dimitri. I decided to set up an account because I do need a new intro. And I thought I'd just be able to talk about it this way. So it was really fun because it kind of walks you through the steps. You get to pick what sex you want your voiceover to be. And as I like a male voice. Don't know why. I guess I've always thought it would sound kind of weird to have a female introducing me. And I have no idea why. That's just, and you can pick the age. You obviously pick the language, and then you can even fine tune it more. I could have picked an American with a Cajun accent. I thought that was pretty funny. And then you go through and you pick different things. Is it, are you wanting them to be comical? You mentioned, you could do things like that. And so you can pick all these different criteria. Then you give a sample script, which happens to be my whole thing. I mean, my intro is very short. And so I just went ahead and put the whole thing in there. But, and then you do really include the whole script, and then you submit it. And it gets reviewed because, and I love this, you were on your website, it said that you are family friendly. So this is not, we're not recording naughty stuff here, folks. And my guess is probably not even bad language. And so mine was approved right away. Now, again, it's very short. Altogether, it's 66 words. So it was very short. Oh, and I forgot, this is one of the important things, pick my budget. Now, I'll admit I picked the lower end of the budget because it is just 66 words, but if obviously if it was a longer project, my budget would have to increase. But there's a variety of things in there. I'm sure that you have people who kind of work in a variety of different ways. So if somebody has a more limited budget, they might just get fewer people who apply for it. So now my understanding is I'll start getting people contacting me with my sample script. And so then I get to pick between them. And so this is very cool. I think this is so much fun. I was approved. I was happy to report mine was approved. But yeah, so it really was a simple process.
Thank you so much for sharing that firsthand account of what it's like. And sometimes we're just so close to it and wonder if it's really hitting the mark. So that you're very gracious in describing it in such detail. There's a lot to actually unpack, if I may, about
Sure.
kind of how we work. I think that actually is great tips for other business owners right off the bat, as you'd mentioned, that we were, captured really, asked for the minimal amount of information possible just to set up the account,
Right.
but also the benefit of, and your willingness to include your phone number allowed us to give you a quick call. And we've found that the experience and the overall customer satisfaction and the likelihood that a new contact would actually convert and turn into a customer increases about 4 to 5x, so 4 to 500% if we can call between 5 and 10 minutes.
Right.
And so that is so important. There's lots of sales related statistics for those interested in doing some Googling after the video here, that, that leads go very stale, even if you leave them for a day.
Right.
And so calling somebody, while they're possibly still on your website or they're
Right.
it's top of mind,
I
if they're
was
thinking of
still
coming,
on your website.
yeah. And the benefit of that is that we could maybe walk you through the process or
Right.
answer the questions while you're still thinking about it. So you're not having to mentally switch back and, oh, I've moved on to something else. So we really try to seize that moment. The other thing is, as you mentioned, is that job posting. And really that's just about capturing the basic information about what you're looking for, what you're looking to get done. And we actually take that information that, let's call it your job requirements, and match that up against actually thousands of voice actors and invite only the most qualified. So as you said, language and gender and age range have a role, and you can think of the role as maybe it's a sports announcer, maybe it's a preacher, maybe it's a business executive, and it's just really what character are you asking this person to perform? And then the style. Do you want them to sound funny, sarcastic? Do you want them to sound very dry or very empathetic? These are all attributes that provide some artistic direction.
Right.
And so the budget range is it does start at $100, and, depending on the complexity of the project, we've had, Fortune 500 companies do corporate training videos, hundreds and hundreds of them.
Right.
And of course, those are going to be on the other end of the spectrum, but a lot of the work is, under a minute long. It's quite brief. But, if you'll permit me, you did mention something that doesn't get a lot of notoriety, is the family-friendly nature of the job postings. As I said, Stephanie and I, both have a faith-based background, and because of that, I think we do recognize, and we have, a young family, I think we do recognize the importance of having good quality content that's put out in the world, and we want to be supportive of that, content, whether it's an audiobook or a game that educates people, that informs them, maybe inspires them, can entertain as well. But we have a number of content guidelines, or really brand guidelines, that serve to ensure that there's, I don't know how best to describe it other than what we call E for everyone. E for everyone content, or family-friendly content, that would show up on voices.com, because we're doing two things there. We're actually putting our name on it. We email out those voice talent and say, there's a great opportunity for you. We want them to feel comfortable. They're literally reading these words aloud.
Right.
They're breathing life into these words. So we want them to be saying good words, healthy words. And the other thing is, as a business owner, you might be concerned about that your job is going up side by side other clients, and you want your name next to another company's name that you also feel is reputable. And so this is this concept of brand safety that a lot of organizations are really concerned about, where their ads show up online, on what websites. And in a similar nature, we want businesses to feel comfortable that when they post a job on voices.com, that they're going to be listed side by side other reputable organizations. So this is just living out a small way to live out the value of trust and integrity. But I really appreciate that resonated with you, because it's something that I think we do differently.
Right.
And frankly, it's cost us business, but that's the choice that we're making to create a safe environment for all parties involved. And we will make that decision every day.
Right. Well, and clearly there are other places that people could go if they wanted something different. But it really did. It caught my attention that it came up and said it was family friendly, or that it would be something along the lines of reviewed for family friendly content, I believe was what it said. And so right there I thought, oh, okay, that makes you, we keep talking about professionalism. To me, that did put you at a different level. You weren't going to record some of the things that would make me go, oh dear, or even just language, because I noticed one of the things that you do, you provide voice for video games. Now, there would be some video games that the language might be a little questionable on. And my guess is you just tell them thank you, but no thank you. And, and refer them down the road. And so, as you said, it does cost business, but it raises your business to a different level.
Video games, not only the language, but even the content
Right.
itself. So it could be overly violent or grotesque.
Right.
And
Yeah, I don't have kids, and so fortunately, but yeah, I'm like, oh, okay, no.
Exactly. And I think look, businesses should stand for something. And it doesn't need to be a political statement.
Right.
It should just mean that you are, how are you leaving the world a better place? And not to sound too philosophical here, but I've actually found, and we have a team of over 100 people, and actually give this training on day number 1. And it's part of we call it our MBA in a day, which is a walkthrough of the strategy, how we operate, some of the decisions that we're making. And strategy, and not to be overly academic here, but really strategy is a set of choices that a business is going to make that positions itself within the context of the competitive landscape. So what choices or decisions are you making that are different than your competitors?
Right.
And when I walk through new employees who are joining us, overwhelmingly, it gets a little awkward for about 3 minutes, and people are like, oh, they realize that we might be making a decision that does turn away business, but really it's so infrequent. I think probably because we've developed a reputation and maybe notoriety that work isn't going to happen on Voices. But in fact, all ages, all walks of life, our staff resonate with this concept of having an E for everyone, because they're reviewing the content. We're inviting voice actors. We're walking them through, how they should respond to some of these jobs. Right. And so I think that allows us to hold our heads high. So in fact, I've never viewed it as a detriment. I viewed it as something that's propelled us forward, and it's served as a bit of a rallying point as well.
Well, and you mentioned that you have thousands of people who do the voices. So that's also a positive for them, because, they know that they're not going to get a script where they're going to think, no, I can't do this, or where they would be embarrassed by it, and I always tell people, is your mother, your rabbi, your priest, your spouse, what are they going to think of what you're doing? And so same thing here, they know that what you send them is great quality content, but yeah, so I like that, because it does set you apart, and there are industries obviously that are very specific for the opposite of what we're talking about, and that's great. They're obviously very successful in that niche.
So I would challenge the entrepreneurs listening and watching to think about how you might be able to incorporate something similar into your business.
Right.
And you don't need to make a huge statement of, you're probably actually already doing it.
Right.
Is there something that that you're living out? How are you living out your values? And often the company's values are really just an extension of the founder's values.
Right.
And that's probably the best way, that if you're scratching your head on, I'm struggling with having good company values, well, what do you, as a small business owner, sole proprietor, founder, what do you personally value, and how can you infuse that into the organization? And my experience is that your team will have a lot of respect, especially if you walk through the background on why that's important to you. Growing up, we didn't have cable television. It was only Canadian Broadcast Corporation, the CBC, which is kind of the public television. That's all I ever saw. And it was, again, there was no violence or anything. So I'm possibly a little more sensitive to that than most. But that is my upbringing, and that's how it's kind of weaved its way into business. As I say, I think it's been overall very well received. Right.
And let's be honest, it is difficult, especially when you're just starting your business and you're thinking, I got to pay the bills. I got to pay the bills. I got to get the clients. I got to pay the bills. And so, many people, even myself, have taken on clients that we think, for whatever reason, maybe it's just that we don't click with them, but we take them on because we have to pay the bills. We have to do, those various things. And, that unfortunately then sets kind of a precedent, where we will take whoever. And so we've talked about this on other programs that I've done where, that is part of, when you're first setting up your business, who is your perfect client? And then how much will you deviate from that? There are some that you might be a little bit different, but yeah, it really is critical that not almost, from the very start, you say, here's who I want to do business with. And there's, obviously a variety of criteria. As you mentioned, it's a very personal choice. I have talked with people who, it's funny when I work with people a lot they're in the job market. And so I'm helping them with their LinkedIn profiles, and they'll say, well, can I put in here that, should I list in my profile that I'm a lay minister? And I tell them, sure, that's, and they say, well, that is a very important part of who I want to work for. And I say, then that's important, because you do want to be part of a company that has, positive family values, whatever it is. I've had other people that say, should I not list that I volunteered for a political party? And I tell them again, it's personal choice. You could limit things, but you can also expand in a different direction. And so, it's always good to know all of that.
Mm-hmm. It's a good segue in as we're talking about how we position ourselves online,
Mm-hmm.
but also the customers that we're actually looking to win.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's too easy at the beginning thinking, wow, here's my offering and we're going to serve everyone. Mm-hmm. And admittedly, I didn't believe a lot, and I didn't think we would change our approach to business by better understanding what's referred to as customer segmentation. Mm-hmm. Basically figuring out who is that ideal customer profile, mm-hmm. and what is their makeup. And I would think of this in three tiers or three mm-hmm. levels. At the highest order, again, hopefully the viewers today will appreciate this. Certainly, I found a lot of value in it myself, so I'm just looking to pass it on. Mm-hmm. But in the highest order, think of the accounts or companies, and maybe it's just even an industry, mm-hmm. right? Maybe it's a certain industry that you're serving. And then as you click down, maybe there's a certain company themselves that would be the best company to go after. And then think one level down is the buyer. So the actual name and title of people that would, the title of people that would potentially buy your service. And I think that's an easier framework, mm-hmm. which is industry, then company, mm-hmm. and then buyer, by title, mm-hmm. rather than just saying, well, we're going to serve everybody within a certain geographic mm-hmm. market. It's helpful to actually narrow that scope. Mm-hmm. I think you can be a lot more effective with your marketing, how you message, how you go to the market, where you're spending your time. Mm-hmm. And so I know we've done that exercise. It sounds like you've done similar exercises in clients that you've worked mm-hmm. with.
Right. And it's funny because I was thinking, for your example, and I have no idea if you've done this or not, but we mentioned that you work with Ford. Okay, so there's Ford. Then they make minivans, and the person who buys the minivan is moms. And so that comes ultimately back to all of the messaging that you have is, we're talking to the moms of the world, and how do we want to come across to them?
Absolutely. And, so at Voices, we found that we're talking to creative producers, mm-hmm. and they're either advertising agencies mm-hmm. or, as you said, these large enterprise size clients. That tends to be people who use voices.com mm-hmm. In a high frequent ongoing basis. Mm-hmm. There's lots of times where maybe once a year once every couple of years, as you said, need to update a phone system or a podcast or a greeting or an online video. But, that's been helpful because I think it shapes the words that you're using, and every one of those words matters. And I think the clearer you can be about specifically what you do, and if you're trying to maybe just to offer out as well, because what we're really talking about here is your strategy. What are all those decisions that you're making? And I once read a book actually after a conference by Susie Welch, and Susie is a very successful female woman business person who's came up with this concept called 10-10-10, which is when you come to these forks in the road or these decision points in life, and really developing a strategy is all about making those decisions. Then ask yourself, is this the best decision 10 minutes from now, 10 months from now, and 10 years from now?
Wow.
And it's a simpler way and more concrete way than saying short, medium, and long term. It makes it very practical. And that's why I love this, because you can make these decisions, say, I'm going to serve this customer, and 10 minutes from now, I might feel great. 10 months from now, I can see how it's going to be overly problematic. I'm going to be having to travel way too much. It's not going to work long term. And that's fine. Just know that you're going into it. Or at Voices, if we have these family-friendly content guidelines, that was a decision that actually maybe was problematic, or in the shortest term, but we felt it would play out well in the long term, which is why we've stuck with that. So I'd love to hear from you, Deb, is there a decision that you feel like you made a while back that, maybe was challenging in the short term, and then it played out well over that long term?
Definitely potential clients where I thought, this just isn't quite right. And, and I tell people we need to go with our gut instinct, and again, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with those clients. It just wasn't a good fit, and sometimes there were much more overt, where you thought, no, not going to work with this person. But other times it was like, and let's be honest, we, have taken some on occasion where it's like, okay, we're really glad this is a short-term project, which is not good, because of course we want, even though it's a short-term project, we either want them to come back to do something again with us, or we want them to tell their friends, and more than likely they have similar friends. So, it's rough, especially when there are bills to pay. There have been times where it's been very clear. I worked with a gentleman was potentially working with a gentleman one time where, this was back when we still responded and wrote proposals, and so this guy came and he said, I'm developing this website, what would you do? And, and of course there was more criteria to it, but, so I filled all this out, sent him the proposal. And it didn't take really long having my business to figure out I don't like doing that part. I mean, proposals were icky, but anyhow, and so I heard back, but he really was one of those people that I thought, there's something here, just something that didn't quite feel right. And I think we especially when we have to pay the bills, we ignore that little voice. And I should have right at the start said, great project, wish you the best of luck, but it's not a good fit for us. So, I go through this, I do all of this stuff. He comes back to me and he says, there were some things in your proposal that I liked and some things that I didn't like, but here's this proposal from another company that I really liked, and I want you to implement it. And I thought, oh, no, danger. I mean, that to me was just big ethical flags. And he'd gone through and he had redacted their name. So I didn't know, who it was, except in one place. And so, it was like, and I told him, I said, no, sir, this is not how I do business. And he got very angry with me. He did not like that, because he liked me, but he liked their proposal.
Right.
And so, and I thought, okay, obviously gut instinct was right. I should not have even done anything. But the proposal that he wanted me to implement was, not only did it have the name, it was somebody I knew, and somebody I knew fairly well. And I thought they need to know. And so I contacted them and I said, you need to know what happened. And of course they said, okay, we're not going to work with this guy either. And, and he obviously got very angry. I mean, he did not, but we all tried to explain to him, that's not how you do business. This is just not, and so there are times like that where it's very clearly obvious. Now, it was a big contract. I mean, it probably would have been something that 5-10 years down the road, we might have still been working with him. So it was very hard to turn that down. But that initial instinct was not, this is just not quite right. And it's funny because every once in a while I look now, he was not successful for whatever reason. But yeah, it was an interesting concept. And I think we probably all kind of had those experiences where somebody comes to us and says, either, we want to hire you, hire your company, like yours and mine, or hire you as an employee. And you think this is just not quite right. And so then you have to make the decision. Do you go with it or not?
You actually are able to refine these skills and abilities of intuition over time.
Right.
The more you run into these situations, the sharper you become to very quickly assess someone else's intentions that way.
Right.
And if you're unsure, it's best just to be frankly confront them and ask those questions. And there are actually, I'm glad you brought that up. There's a lot of parallels between bringing on a new client because as well as a new employee, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. The client's evaluating you, but what a lot of clients don't realize is that, you're also making a decision whether you want to work with them. And same thing goes, during a hiring process of a new employee. And that's why, I found it helpful to have some of these criteria that you use. And for new employees, I often, I employ a lot of these rules of three, probably because it's easy for me to remember. But, when it comes to new employees, it doesn't matter what role it is. I always look for the same three attributes, which first and foremost is curiosity. I love when someone has, grown up playing Legos and putting puzzles together and explored and, enjoys, it could be science or music or sports. They're curious on how things work and how the worlds work, because that means that they're likely to be a great, not only self-starter, but also someone who troubleshoots and kind of gets to the bottom of things. And so I ask questions like, tell me about a time when you didn't understand how something worked, but you figured it out. And that usually sparks off a conversation or a story. I also look for competitiveness and someone who's competitive either in people in a similar role, such as sales, or people that are actually, a lot of people are competitive with themselves. They just, they know that there's a certain quality. They hold themselves to a very high standard. I think that's great. And usually there's some history of success or some signs of success. It could be on a sports team. It could be, again, a solo performance, dance or theater. I mean, these are very competitive amongst themselves. And the last thing I do look for is coachability. And this is, speaks to their humility because you can be very curious and very aggressive and very competitive, but if you're unwilling to take a word of truth from a coach or a mentor or even a peer, I think that can create a lot of friction within an organization. And so someone that's not only able to receive that and being very coachable, but also they learn from others, they're also willing to give. And someone, I found that someone who is coachable also serves as a great coach or a mentor to others. So those are the three attributes that I look for. And again, hopefully that's helpful for those that are maybe at a crossroads of how do I go about hiring an employee or a next employee? Some questions you could consider during that interview process.
And I love that because someone might be very competitive, which is probably going to be good for your business, especially if they're in sales, and all the various things. But if they aren't coachable, then it's not going to make a difference. They might hit that sales mark, they might go really high, but if you can't give them constructive criticism or show them different ways to operate, for one thing, they're probably not going to stay with you. They're going to be so competitive that they're always looking for the next big opportunity. But yeah, I mean, you have to have a team player. And so it really is that mix. And look at sports. Sports are probably the best way to really look at that. You've got your quarterbacks, you've got your pitcher, you've got your whoever that is incredibly talented. But if they're not that team player, then it's not going to matter, because they'll be disruptive in the locker room. They'll blow big plays, all those various things. And of course, that's why then there are, small businesses. They go off, they start their own, in the sports analogy, they're a track star, they're tennis, they're whatever. They do something that is, a single sport. But yeah, it's very interesting to think about how you're going to build your team and then maintain it. There are also obviously the times where you have to get rid of somebody, because they're a detriment to the team. And sometimes it's almost always for the good of everyone, because but it is hard. I mean, I've been in the position where I've had to fire people. Ugh, I hated it, but I knew in the long run, it's kind of back to the 10-10-10 thing. It was going to be better. I was going to have a horrible 10 minutes, even 10 months, we might still be struggling, but down the road, it was better for everybody.
It's, if you're unwilling, the behavior that we tolerate ends up being, what actually becomes the norm within a culture. Right. Mm-hmm. And so if it is anger or breach of confidentiality or, theft, depending on kind of, anywhere where someone is certainly offside, I think if the question that everybody else in the company or in the team will ask is, why isn't our leader doing anything about this? Mm-hmm. Like, can they not see? It actually reflects on you as a manager or as a leader. And so there is a responsibility to make some of those tough calls. And I would say that's the hardest part that I certainly wasn't prepared for, but that's the hardest part about building a team is that a lot of people will be fantastic and work out great and everyone will get along. And other times, what you expected and you were hopeful for during the interview process, those initial kind of couple weeks of training, as you said, it just kind of devolves into just not being a good fit. And, what was told to me, and I continue to pass on is no one ever really regretted afterwards of kind of firing too quickly. It's when you hold on to somebody expecting them to turn around. Right. And now that said, I wish I had a whiteboard here because I would doodle this up for you, but there's almost, here's another rule of three. So for those of you taking notes, I think there's three different timelines where you need to consider if we're talking about performance management, that if someone's not delivering results, then, and that could, again, any role, whatever those deliverables or those results are, there really ought to be a lot more patience there, which is, let's call that, 3 to 6 months. So sometimes it just takes people, especially if there's a steep learning curve in your industry or your tools and technology that you're using in your business, but 3 to 6 months. But before the results is going to come the effort. So I definitely expect an effort and you should well. Right. But if there's no results and there's no effort, well, at minimum, there's got to be a great attitude. And if an employee or a team member is coming in, right off the bat or just, frankly, having a bad attitude, that's where I think is really the what we're kind of referring to here, of people that tend to, for whatever reason, unfortunately, kind of bring down the rest of the team. That's really where there really can't be a whole lot of tolerance. 30-day turnaround. Look,
Right.
we need you to come in and bring your best self. Whatever, we know you might have some challenges outside of work. But we need your head here when you're in the office, when you're speaking with our customers, the people that we're serving. And so I think having that tough love conversation, and that's a quick turnaround. Those other ones, I give most of us and all of us, given the benefit of the doubt, we're coming in with a great, we'll have a bad day here and there, but we've got a great attitude.
Right.
Now we need to see effort, and effort leads to results.
Right.
So I would just caution to be too hasty to just say, oh, somebody didn't deliver results in the first 30 days. Well, maybe there's, they need more training or better understanding. Right. So I would think in terms of those time frames. Hopefully that's helpful to make some good decisions in terms of managing performance of the team.
Right. Yeah. And, and it comes back to having things clearly defined, in your business, part of, well, for example, when I was filling out the process, it said, when did I want the applications by?
Yep, the auditions. Yep, the people reading that audition for you.
And I'm guessing I may even already have some. I have my email closed, but I may already have some, so that's going to be cool. But and so there is that time frame. So you could have somebody who is absolutely fabulous, but if they don't meet that time frame, well, they're obviously not going to get the job. And so it's all about being clear with people, whether they're a contractor, whether they're an employee. Same thing with clients. I mean, I tell my clients, I need you to give me X by X, and I try and put it in writing because it gets really easy to forget and all of these various things. So the more important it is, the more likely it's going to be in writing. But we have to be clear about what we're looking for too, and so that's where we just really have to stop and think it through, and it comes back to what we were saying at the start, that we build our businesses based on our personal views and our personal feelings and ways that we want to operate and people we want to do business with. And the cool thing is, when we've done it enough, then that's pretty much the only people that we end up associating with, right? The others have weeded themselves out. They know, don't even bother. So we don't really have to, it's already been kind of self-policed. We're not going to have clients come to us that are going to ask us to do things that we're not going to do because we're just not even in their realm either. And so it comes back to you saying, on your site that you're family friendly. Okay, then somebody who's not, they're just not even going to try because, they know, okay, well, I need to find somebody other than voices.com to do my project.
No, it's certainly those, as much as some people might decide just to not do business with you, which is A-okay. I should, I'll reuse the phrase of giving kind of the word of warning here, that you will be challenged on this, and it'll continue to come up, and maybe somebody leaves a bad review for you, and because it actually struck a nerve to them, and they maybe even be offended by it. And so I guess I just wanted to encourage those of us who have been grounded in values, whatever those values are, if they're meaningful to you, hold true to them. And I am sure you'll come out the other side. You'll feel great about the decisions you've made. You'll be stronger. You'll have a great story to tell at a minimum.
Right. And ultimately it comes back to, as we said, knowing who you want to work with. So developing, your best potential client, who do you really want to work with? And then, you go from there. And it's interesting because, voices.com is clearly going to work with, a pretty wide range, anybody from somebody like me up to Google. I mean, that's pretty, but in that subset, as you said, it's the technical person, it's the marketing person, it's whoever that is, then what is their persona? We talk about avatars and marketing, target markets and all those things a lot, but it really does come back to knowing exactly who you want to work with and work for.
No, I agree. These are such valuable exercises because often it's all in our heads, and I think you can see it and you can imagine it. But as a leader in your business, going through that exercise of creating a buyer persona or a user persona or some, character archetype, if you will, it's fun. It can become, grabbing a photo or doodling one yourself, drawing one yourself, but describing them in vivid detail, I think, is such a good exercise, serves as a great training tool for, again, as we say, new employees joining the company, or even just amongst your marketing team. Communication, amongst, everybody within the organization is just can't be understated. And we run an annual employee engagement survey. We actually run them a couple times a year. And, while we score, there's 100 questions or so. And we've dialed it back. I mean, it's a few dozen now, but we've scored well in most areas. But what continues to surprise me is that communication continues to be a challenge, actually, despite, we have a weekly team meeting. We have an internal social network called Chatter. We have emails that go out. We have posters around the office. I mean, there's a lot of, communication that happens. And I'm recognizing that it's not that someone received the communications, that I got it in a timely manner, which means everybody gets the same message at the same time, and that it's very clear and often needs to be repeated. And so repeating, to tie this back to the customer personas, repeating who it is that we're here to serve, who it is that we want to go after and bring them into our ecosystem. That's an excellent tool to ensure everyone is so clear about why we're in business and who we're trying to win over as customers.
Right. Well, good gosh, David, we are almost at the top of the hour. So speaking of who you want to work with, tell us a little bit more about voices.com. And I'm hoping, well, let's see, your program is scheduled to air several weeks after we're doing this, so I probably will have my new voiceover by then. So I'll talk about it in the promos for the program. But, and I can't wait to finish up this process. I think it's going to be very cool. But, tell us a little bit more about voices.com and how you work with people.
Sure. So Voices is a online marketplace, which means we actually have two different groups of customers. The corporate clients, like you would be a corporate client, if you will, who's looking for a voice. You can go on and post a job, and Voice Talent would audition for you, and they would see how much they're willing to do the work for. And so that's those corporate clients at small, medium size, and large enterprises would be, ideal on that side. And to complement the clients are obviously the voice actors. And so the voice actors are people who have typically a great sounding voice, artistic abilities. They often have home recording studios that they work from. And so someone who might have been an actor at one point or worked in a radio station, those are the voice actors that I would invite to sign up and create a profile on voices.com and hopefully get invited to some of those opportunities. So that's how it works in a nutshell. And we're, as I said, we're having a great time doing it. We feel like we found this one little slice of the world that we believe that we can have a real positive impact on.
And again, it's any size of project, from, somebody's new voicemail message, somebody's new podcast intro, all the way up to video games, online training, all of these things that need that professional level of voice of talent, and so it's a great opportunity, and I love this.
Well, I would encourage folks to sign up for free on voices.com, or if you want to check us out on various social channels, it's just simply @Voices. So Voices either on Twitter or on Instagram as well too. Somehow we got the single one-word name on those social platforms, and there's a lot of great content there.
Right. and obviously, many, many languages, as I said, then it's, you go down from there, what type of accent do you want, all those various things. And so, as you're thinking of your business, how are you presenting yourself, and what is that voice that you want people to hear, because it might not be mine, it might not be that other business owner. We want to present ourselves in that best possible way.
That's wonderful. Well, I've really enjoyed the conversation today. It's been a lot of fun just being able to tell a story of how we got started and some of the business tips that I've learned often the hard way about who we're serving as customers, what kind of values we have, and how we've grown a team over the years as well.
Perfect. What are there any final thoughts you want to leave everyone with?
Oh, goodness. Well, if you're needing some encouragement, I would encourage you to do what you're doing here today. Talk to other business owners. Take somebody out for coffee. Go out for lunch, and be willing to be vulnerable. I know that's really helped out, sharing those struggles of what's working, what isn't. Ask for advice from people who've been there and done that. It's so much to learn from others. And so I'm just grateful to be able to participate on a podcast this such. I learned a lot from you, Deb, about the clients, that how important it is to be clear about the type of projects that we're taking on and making those good decisions that way. So, the more you get out there in the world, ask those tough questions, being vulnerable, I know that that'll reap some rewards in helping you grow your own business.
Perfect. I love it. Well, I am Deb Creer. I've been having a fascinating discussion with David Ciccarelli. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.